Well, good morning. I have
Morning,
Bill
Russ.
Herberger with me, and Bill Herberger is one of the people that I've looked up to for over 30 years in terms of collections and AR and credit card management, as well as commercial banking. Worked in similar companies and worked a bit with them. Gosh, a sister company back in the 1980s. I'm dating myself a little bit. So with that said, I thought we'd talk a little bit about customer experience and how it relates to accounts receivable. So before we do that, Bill, you want to tell us a little bit about who you are, because you can do a lot more justice than I ever could.
Sure, Russ. And it's great to see you again. It's been a long time. I've spent probably 35 years in the banking industry, recently retired, worked through all the different risk operations from collections to fraud to lending in the credit card organizations, as well as credit ops for both commercial banking and business banking. And over that time, found it just a thoroughly enjoyable place to be with lots of opportunities. So it's been a great 35 years, and I'm happy to be here today to talk about it with you.
Fantastic. Well, it sounds like you've got a wide lens of consumer banking and even some commercial banking. So with that said, I want to focus a little bit more on the AR, because that's the part that fascinates me. I came out of collections when I was young. I was a bill collector. I thought when I was in my early 20s, I'd be looking at those blue cardboard sheets for the rest of my life, trying to find my guys and get them to pay. So I really love that industry. It really taught me a lot. So thinking about that, if you could think about the experience you had running large collections organizations, what do you think would be the top two or three success factors that go into controlling charge-offs while retaining a customer-centric approach? I know that might be hard, but if you could come up with a couple of things on that.
Sure. And to your point, it may seem counterintuitive to some folks, but they actually do go hand in hand. And one of the most important foundational principles that I always believed in and made the most difference for me was to build a culture that was focused on helping customers resolve their financial issues. Too often, we think of collectors as getting on the phone, and it's more of an adversarial role as opposed to a coaching and assisting role. But if you train the workforce correctly, they actually can be quite helpful to customers in thinking through how to resolve their delinquencies. For example, there's different opportunities for customers to use things like credit counseling services and also re-aging programs that most of your customers don't know about unless they have the opportunity to talk to someone. So I think having people that are really focused on helping customers is probably the most important foundational skill sets we want to make sure the team has.
I'm glad you said that. I remember when I was with Household Credit, now HSBC, I used to do volunteer work for consumer credit counseling, and I loved it. I would coach people who really had no idea about their credit scores and the importance. And I was an early person with Fair Isaac in terms of helping to build and verify data control models and scorecards. So for me, it was easy to tell people that didn't know anything about credit, well, you might want to take care of this so that you can get your secret clearance if you're in the military, or if you want to get that police job, or if you want to, it meant so much, and people had no idea. And to your point also, if you educate your customers, they're going to spend less money over their lifetime on things like late fees and finance charges. So I agree with you. The education is so important.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And companies like the National Foundation for Consumer Credit are key partners, as you are well aware, in helping us do that. So time well spent with you investing time there.
Absolutely. John Tinetti, a fellow coworker that we both knew from, I think, from Chase and from Household, he's working for, one of the government entities now in Washington, D.C., helping consumer protection. I think he's with the Consumer Protection Agency now. I ran into him a few months ago. So, yeah, I think that anybody who does what we do, we have a special place in our heart to teach people and to help protect people if we can. So good stuff.
Absolutely.
So I want to move on to the next topic. As you know, I've spent a long time working either auditing outsourcers or working as an outsourcer. So with that said, I remember when I would take my old big laptop and go out, every month on the road and visit the outsourcers, the collection agencies, whoever it was, to go audit them. So in your opinion, how often should you go out and audit your outsourcing partners? And should you do it in person or should you do it like this? What are your thoughts about the audit function?
Yeah, so it's certainly changing over time. I mean, I think we both remember a day when you went out every single quarter religiously, right? But you didn't have tools and technologies like this as we do today, as well as some of the others I'll mention. So I do think it's evolving. But before I give an opinion on that, I want to take a step back and say probably the most important thing with effective outsourcing is a comprehensive and effective due diligence process right up front. If you pick the right partners, it makes the whole relationship immensely better. Additionally, if you do the right due diligence up front, things like reputational risk management and operational risk management, which are core with your outsourcers, are things that you deal with right up front. And you know whether or not culturally you're aligned on those things, which is extremely important. So with that said, assuming you've picked the right partners, you certainly can go out more frequently when you first sign up with a client or a outsourcer that you want to do business with, and then choose as the maturity grows to tail off some. But you never really step away because they're essentially part of your organization or an extension of your organization, certainly from the customer's mind. So you need to stay very active in that relationship. And between visits, you should be employing other technologies, whether it be video conferences like this, or I really think everybody should invest in using negative media scans because you never know what's out there unless you're taking the time to look. So having negative media scans on all partners to know if there's anything going on that you haven't become aware of yet. Monthly complaint reviews with those partners. You don't have to go there in order to review what complaints might be outstanding. You should have those as part of your oversight with that partner in order to know what they're hearing in terms of complaints and how they're adjusting their processes, if appropriate, to deal with those. And lastly, there's other things like mystery shopping that actually can be very beneficial to give you views that you won't get through the other ways we've talked about.
I love that. Yeah, those are all things and tools in my toolkit as well. And the just monitoring the social media and I think um, the verbatims that you see in things like Net Promoter Score surveys are really good because then you can drill down and see which center had what kind of verbatim. And sometimes you'll see a weakness in the construct of the methods and procedures that you've given your partner, and those constraints prevent them from being empowered to take care of the customer. So yeah, good stuff. So I'm hearing that you're saying that you would visit from time to time, but you'd use, your Power BI with Microsoft. You'd use your meetings like this, stuff like that, to augment those meetings. So good
That's
stuff.
right. There's so many other tools to help you do it more effectively and efficiently. But make no mistake, there's nothing like having an on the ground visit and meeting with those partners, which frankly can have other purposes, which we can get into as we get into one of your other questions coming up soon.
Cool. Well, I tell you, that's a good segue for my next question. So I grew up in the early 80s as a bill collector. That was my first real job. And I remember being taught by this I won't say his name, this guy. I loved him to death. But he was from the school of turning people upside down. He's an old South Philadelphia guy, shaking them till the change came out, that kind of thing. And you just keep shaking. And so I had to quickly learn to adapt and change because we had to. And I didn't want to have any FDCPA violations. I didn't want to have to pay any fines. And I also didn't want to go home gritting my teeth and being frustrated and angry. I didn't like that. So I had to change the way I did it for my own personal health, but also professionally. So what's your favorite recipe for turning collectors into ambassadors for the brand that you represent?
Good question. So first and foremost, they really need to understand and embrace why their job is important. And that gets back to the culture comments we talked about in the first question. That only comes from educating them on the job itself and also how it helps the customer, like we talked about. Additionally, I really think it's important to enlist the support of the executives from principals to talk with your teams and frankly be part of recognition programs and other things when say they're on site for an auditor review, so that there's a face to the principal that that team itself is supporting, and they get a
I love
sense
that.
of, yeah, they get a sense of belonging, they get a sense of accountability. Those are very important things that I think you need to have. The other things that I would add to that is making sure they have the right tools, because nothing frustrates people more than if they don't have the right tools to do their job. And they also need the right coach and, frankly, real-time assistance when needed. And things like AI and other technologies that are now becoming more on the forefront of how we're doing business and how we're going to do business more every day are things that are going to be able to help in this space immensely.
Well, cool. So I hear recognition. I hear giving the tools that they need to do their job. Um, that's really good. I couldn't agree with you any more on those things. Those are things that have been very helpful all along, and also maybe job empowerment and helping people to be cross assigned to do other things. Because if you are a bill collector, you know everything about your company. You learn everything and you become assertive. So I think that so often you can turn a bill collector into a customer service agent or
That's
a credit analyst or a fraud analyst because they get that baseline of knowledge about the company.
that's a great point, Russ. I think you and I both had the same experience of growing into many different opportunities as a result of that. That's very true.
Well, I know that it's a um, early morning for you, so I've only got two more questions. I'll try to go fast because I tend to talk too much if I don't get myself modulated. So with that said, second to last question. I know that when you outsource, there's a lot of things you need to take care of to recognize shareholder value, shareholder importance, as well as the dollars and cents. And those cultural differences in different locations can really matter. I mean, just I think about some countries where there's 50 vacation days and it's hard to figure out when they're going to come to work. Or maybe I had to work through a social unrest and it is difficult for me and my agents to get to work. Or maybe I had to bring a backpack with my clothes because I had to wade up to my waist in flood water. I've had all those things happen to me. Or a company that doesn't maybe treat all people of different backgrounds the same way like you would see in the United States, and sometimes that's distasteful to say the least. So with that said, how do you weigh the importance of values, shareholder values, against risk in different locations and different value sets when you assign work either nearshore or offshore?
Yeah, it's a great question, and it's top of mind for everybody, I think, these days. First and foremost, in my experience, you don't compromise your values. So, as a company, if you have expressed specific values that you believe in, then it's important to stay true to those values, whether you're onshore, offshore, or nearshore. So, that said, things like greenhouse gases, things like diversity, a number of these different factors are things that you need to think about when you're offshoring and how much it is important to you from a value standpoint. Every company makes those choices themselves. My experience is everybody unilaterally agrees corruption is not okay. So let's just use that as a common denominator. When you find places where there's a lot of corruption, it's almost immediate kryptonite from doing business there, right? The other factors you talked about, they also matter too, but I would say that the culture, the economic stability, the political situation, the infrastructure reliability, those play right to your reputational risk and resiliency concerns. And those things, there's lots of good data and information from resources like the World Bank you can get as you're looking at outsourcing. There's great outsourcing partners, frankly, that know a lot about it, like yourself, that different principals can talk to and get advice in order to understand what the different trade-offs are. But those things need to be factored in extremely well. Because if you don't give them the right consideration, you may not have the uptime and reliability that you need from who you're trying to partner with. And that can become a real source of concern.
Very good. Couldn't have said it any better. So last thing, what do you think is the next big thing that's going to hit the collections industry? Um, what's over the horizon?
Yeah, boy, in looking at this space in 35 years, it's a fascinating question. I think technology's already obviously brought us very close together. You can do our work from just about anywhere now, right? You've seen that. I think technology is going to continue to tremendously evolve the collector's desktop and tool set, and the company's ability, or the principal's ability, to monitor both compliance and regulatory adherence. Things like AI, for example, are going to make all the different channels we talk to our customers through an omni-channel in both presentation layer as well as digestion. Other things that are going to go on are AI is going to be a invisible coach to a collector as they're working, because it's going to be able to tap into all these other data sources that the collector couldn't do real time, but the AI is going to be able to do. And so it's going to greatly enhance what's available to the collector when he or she is at their desk performing their work. So these are some of the things that I think are coming and going to become more prominent, but it's going to take some time.
Fantastic. I look forward to that stuff. I love chat bots and voice bots, and something that tells the agent what it is that they might want to say that another agent had tried in the past that worked. So
That's
AI
a
does
great
all that.
example.
Yeah. Well, fantastic. Well, I think we covered a lot today, and I'm looking forward to our next meeting. But this will conclude the podcast number 3 on CX. And Bill, I really appreciate you spending time of your morning to talk to me.
Thanks, Russ. It was great seeing you again.
All right. We'll talk to you later.
Bye for now.
So I have stopped recording.